Hello and welcome to Updog Sports Talk. Here at Updog Sports Talk, we highlight the fans, the communities, the teams, and the players that are often overlooked by mainstream sports media. We do this because your team has a story worth telling. So thank you for tuning in to us. That's kind of your intro if you're tuning in for the first time. But in that spirit, today we are looking at the NEC, which this is probably one of the only in terms of a podcast that covers a variety of teams. This is probably one of the only NEC previews you're going to come across. Now, of course, if you want more NEC focused coverage, definitely tune in to our friends over at the NEC Blitz. They do an excellent job providing coverage to this conference. It should be covered more. I think a lot of times people kind of look at it because they have the smallest budgets at the FCS level. They're probably not going to earn multiple bids or anything. But just because that's the case doesn't mean that these programs don't deserve to be covered as well. And that's why we're going to be diving into them team by team, looking at what a reason to be excited about each team, what might hold them back, and then what does success look like in 2026. At the end of the show, I'll go over my sleeper pick for the conference and then my conference champion. So let's go ahead and dive in. Starting out with the back-to-back champs, the Central Connecticut State Blue Devils. This is definitely one of the top elite programs in the conference. It feels like they're knocking on the door of pulling an FCS upset soon. I mean, they came close to upsetting Rhode Island each of the last 2 years. So it feels like they're knocking on the door of that. And, they have a secondary that's really good. Corner Chris Jean is one of the elite corners in FCS football. He is on the Buck Buchanan nominee list, so he is going to be a guy to watch. Their receiver room on the opposite side of the ball is going to be really loaded. Donovan Wadley in particular looks like he could be really a star player here. So this team is looking really good. I think maybe the one thing that we need to see them improve on, yes, the secondary looks good, but the defense overall gave up probably more yards than we are comfortable seeing if this team is going to maintain their status at the top of the conference. They gave up 376 yards per game last year. So that kind of makes games a little bit more competitive than they need to be. So that will be one area that I would like to see Central Connecticut State improve on. And that will also be the key to being able to get to the playoffs and really pull off that upset win. I think that's the one thing they're missing. But in terms of success, I mean, really, it does look like winning the NEC. That is the number one thing. There's a lot of pride in winning this conference among these teams because the margins are so slim. So maintaining your conference championship status, winning it your third in a row would be huge for this program. But it would be great to see them pull that upset in the playoffs as well. That would be a lot of fun. We go to the Duquesne Dukes. Duquesne is definitely one of the more steady programs in the conference as well. It's actually a little bit surprising seeing them only third in the preseason poll, but they are just a stable program that's always right towards the top. They added a quarterback in Carson Camp who led Southeastern to the playoffs last year. He comes in a quarterback. They have already a really good run game. Running back Ness Davis is a star running back. So that definitely is a lot to build around with the offense. But ultimately, Duquesne is going to need to be better defensively in order to compete for the conference title this year. Last year, the defense gave up more than 25 points per game. That is a little too much in order to win a conference title. So they'll need to improve on that side of the ball. But I think for Duquesne, success does look like winning the NEC and making the playoffs. I think would be a successful season for them. I think being in the race at least is good, finishing in the top two, but really this is a program that expects to win the NEC every year. So I think that's going to be what their standard is. And it's kind of funny because this is all in alphabetical order. I'm not trying to do my projected standings, but another one of the top 3 teams in the preseason poll, we get all 3 of them right at the beginning here. The Long Island Sharks. They are a program that's really rising in the last few years. They have a quarterback in Ethan Greenwood who's really exciting. and their defense is very, very good. They have Trey Watkins, who's just a ball hawking safety back there. He's on the Buck Buchanan watch list. So he's going to be a guy to watch. And really, in general, like this defense is very, very good. They were the top defense in the NEC last year. So they'll be looking to keep that going. And then I think the one main thing, though, is going to be Greenwood's health. He needs to stay healthy. Without him, the offense just didn't have much life. They only scored just barely over 16 points per game. That is not going to win you a conference title. So that is going to be the one area where they're going to look to get better. If Greenwood's healthy the whole year, I suspect that does look a lot better. So for the Long Island Sharks, I think you're looking at potentially this is a very promising year. Like they are very much right in the thick of this conference title race. So that's going to be their goal this year. So win the NEC title. I think that looks like a successful season for them, and would be a huge season. Really, I think that would be great for this program. So yeah, that will be. This is a team to watch. I'm very excited to see what they can do this year. But of course, and for the most part, with this next team, the Mercyhurst Lakers, this is probably the only time I'm going to point out a schedule, just because all of these teams play a tough non-conference schedule. You've got to, again, the budget's not the highest, so you've got to pay the bills somehow. Usually it's playing these road games against elite opponents. Long Island plays at North Dakota to start the year, for example. We go to Mercyhurst. I mean, this team, and I guess I'm starting out with the concern here, but I mean, in terms of a brutal slate, Mercyhurst specifically might have the worst one because they play 3 FBS opponents. They open their first two games. They go to the state of New Mexico twice. They play New Mexico, the Lobos, and then they play New Mexico State as well. And the Lobos are the latter of those matchups. That is a very physical team that's going to probably beat this team up a little bit. So staying really for all of these teams staying healthy after their non-conference schedule is going to be a huge key, but especially for Mercyhurst playing such a physical team and really just having to go up against those FBS teams. And their offense needs to score more as well. Under 20 points per game last year. Offensive line allowed too much pressure. But on the bright side, like you've got a program that's continuing to build up. They're still in transition to the FCS level, so they're really working their way up towards having FCS level talent, and their defense has really been really good for this program. And I think that's going to continue even with the coaching change. And one of the things that gives them hope to add more pop to the offense is they got a pretty loaded receiver room that returns. Those guys could really help this offense get going a little bit. And then really for the goals, I mean, Mercyhurst is going to, I think while they're in transition, I think being competitive, maybe finishing closer to that 500 level. Well, I mean, the 500 is probably actually pretty close to the top of the conference because of the non-conference schedule. And again, only 4 home games. So winning all those 4 home games is going to be huge. And being near the top of the NEC, trying, maybe even infiltrating the top 3 would be great for this program. It really show that once they're eligible, they're going to be really, really. Next, the New Haven Chargers. This is the newcomer of the conference. New Haven is going to have a really exciting offense once again. I think this is one of the cooler fields in college football. They got some blue turf, but their offense is going to be really exciting. AJ Duffy is a former really talented recruit who struggled to find his footing at the FBS level, but then came to New Haven and excelled. So he is a talent at quarterback that we're really not used to seeing in this conference. So he's going to be really good again. The offensive line did a fantastic job last year. They only gave up 8 sacks all of last year. Like that, the big guys up front, they deserve a lot of credit. I mean, that is really, really impressive. So they'll need to maintain that, but we'll need to see the defense take a step forward this year in order for New Haven to be a more serious team towards the top of the conference. Last year, the defense gave up over 28 points per game So they'll need to try to take a step forward there. This team is also not eligible for FCS playoffs yet, but winning the NEC would provide a lot of pride for them. And really, that's kind of the interesting thing when it's kind of tough to say what success looks like because this conference is competitive enough that anyone can win this conference. But I think for New Haven, just being able to finish around 500 and being competitive even in their losses, I think would look really good for them. Now to the Robert Morris Colonials. Robert Morris is they actually ended up with a lot of headlines recently because they're going to be the team that goes up against Akron when some fan calls the opening drive of their game. I believe Robert Morris fans did attempt to infiltrate that and potentially get themselves, try to sabotage things a little bit. That did not happen. They were not one of the 9 finalists. But so this is a team that really entered headlines because of that. But ultimately, this is a team that, kind of took a very big step back last year. And they're trying to make their way back forward again. So there's a lot of new players in here. They added a really strong portal class that's going to instantly improve the talent level of this team again. They're going to kind of re-energize themselves at that. They also have a really good high school recruiting class coming in behind that. So that being said, the big thing is going to be, can they mesh all of that together? Just so much new. If it all meshes, like they could be really good and compete towards the top of the conference. But if not, it could be a pretty challenging year once again. The offense especially will need to take a step forward. And that's really where a lot of the portal talent was focused on because their offense averaged just over 15 points a game. That's not going to get it done. So this year they'll be looking to get better at that. The next team on the list, the Stonehill Skyhawks, another one of they're relative newcomers here, but I think this is a program that's continuing to build and get better. Their secondary has a really good returning core. And really just from top to bottom, like they have a lot of depth in this unit. And their quarterback, Jack O'Connell, returns. That's going to be really huge. And really, like when Stonehill played great defense, this team won. And I mean, they were elite at times, including even upsetting Maine on the road last year. So this is a team that can play defense against anybody. They just need to be consistent in that area. And of course, the offense must get a little bit better. They, in particular, like O'Connell returning needs to lead to the passing game to get a step forward. They prefer to run the ball, but if they can't get receivers open in the pass game, teams can kind of focus on the run a little bit. The offense could only muster 15 points per game last year. Offensive line gave up 29 sacks. So those are the little areas that they can improve on to continue to rise up in this conference. And really for them, success also looks like getting above 500, being competitive in this conference, beating one of those top 3, I would say, and showing that they're going to be a factor once they are eligible for the playoffs. And I think this gets us to our last team here, the Wagner Seahawks. This is a team that has a really talented and deep defensive line. This unit is going to be a must-see because they're going to hassle a lot of offenses, especially in this conference. So they're going to be really difficult. I think overall the defense looks really solid. For Wagner, the big thing is going to be, can they pass the ball? Can they figure out anything positive in the passing game? This was the worst passing offense in FCS last year. They only had 97 yards per game, which is just a remarkably low number. So they'll need to get better here. If the passing game takes a step forward, you're looking at a team that's going to be instantly competitive in this conference because they have a lot of other good pieces. But they'll need to get that going. I obviously like running the ball is still their big thing, but they just need the passing game to be more of a threat. But for Wagner, I think success looks like rising up in the conference a little bit more. They're continuing to make a lot of progress each year. You could see the building blocks of this program like working its way up and becoming more competitive to potentially get into the race to win this conference soon enough. I think getting at least being up there, finishing in the top half of the conference would look really good for them this year. So that gets to the picks here at the end. My sleeper pick is going to be Stonehill. I think their defense is going to make them a major pain for everyone in their path. So, and they're getting more used to the FCS level now. They're definitely going to be right there. And I think they managed to pick off one of these top 3 teams. I don't know which one yet, but they'll make it happen. That's going to be my sleeper team. My conference championship pick. I mean, how can it not be Central Connecticut State? I still think this is a really, really good team. They're continuing to get better. So give me the Central Connecticut State Blue Devils to win the NEC for a 3rd year in a row. This was a lot of fun, kind of diving into these teams that definitely don't get a lot of coverage. So thank you for tuning in. If you're not familiar with this conference, I hope you learned a lot, because I know you probably didn't hear this many other places, but thank you for tuning in, and be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review, because all of that just helps us continue to bring more coverages to the teams that deserve it, like these teams. So thank you for tuning in.